What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and Underdog is running a really cool tournament right now where they're having a best ball resurrection tournament that takes place from week 6 through week 17. And it's pretty much like a normal Underdog best ball tournament, but it takes place 5 weeks into the season. It's $10 to enter, $100,000 to first place, $500,000 in total prizes. And the coolest part about it is that we get pretty much a live updating feed of what the market thinks in terms of rest of season. I think that this is probably the most accurate showing of how the market feels about the current landscape after 1 week, where the ADP updates every single day, and this is a $10 tournament. So there's money on the line. It updates every day, and this is what the top 12 looks like in this format. So we have A.J. Brown moving up a full round as a late second type of guy going to the 1-2 turn. You have Saquon moving all the way to 106. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at the ADP here. I put it all into an Excel sheet, and then I went back to ADP from Underdog drafts from the first Thursday kickoff. So pretty much the final ADP of 2022, and then comparing it to Best Ball Resurrection ADP to kind of see the biggest value gainers and value losers from week 1. So first of all, if you're new to Underdog and you want to hop in on this tournament, maybe you're down bad, 0-1, you want to hop out there, run up an Underdog Best Ball draft. We're actually going to be doing a live stream once this goes live. So once this video uploads, I'm just going to run up a live stream right after. I'm probably going to title it like answering your fantasy questions or whatever. We'll talk through, start sits, the Michael Pittman stuff, the Gabe Davis stuff, all that good stuff. Talk through start sits, trade questions, all that good stuff. And we'll just do one of these best ball drafts in the background. So if you want to join me in that, make sure you check out the live stream. Make sure you put post notifications on. Make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code RON when you sign up, and they will match your deposit all the way to $100. So I'll put a link in the description at the top of the comments below if you want to get in on Best Ball Resurrection. I think it's going to be a really fun contest from week 6 through 17. Now, for this video in particular, I figured it'd be fun to pick out 5 of the biggest movers that were either, moved up a bunch of spots from that first Thursday game ADP, or the guys who moved down a bunch of spots from that first game. So we're going to stop wasting time here. I think you guys kind of get the idea. We're going to talk about players that have moved a lot since where we drafted them from. So with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, the first guy we're going to talk about here is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man. And he's a hot topic right now. He was the 802 as the RB29 on that last Thursday. And now he has skyrocketed to the 505 as the RB17. So that's 12 running back spots. In about 3 rounds, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has moved up, and it's warranted. He's averaged now 19.1 points per game, which is really strong in his first 2 games, which is way above that 15 point per game sort of threshold we're looking for with these RB2s. Now, when we talk about these players, there's not a ton that we're going to have in terms of like concrete stuff, but I kind of wanted to just talk about how I feel about these players, how I feel about them moving forward. Are they too overpriced? What I would be doing if I had them on my team. And CEH moving up the rankings is warranted, but it's one I'm conflicted on because the production's been a little bit fraudulent, right? Where he's scoring points, but not on a ton of volume. He's only seen 15 total carries through 2 games, which if you're the RB1 on the Chiefs, that's not great. And he's only been at 11 touches per game. We want something more in the area of like 15 touches per game. And Dwayne McFarland, who we're going to reference a ton, not only in this video, but honestly all season, he does the utilization report over on Fantasy Life, over on PFF. Probably the most must-read article that comes out every week in the fantasy season. And he sort of sifts through how backfields, wide receiver groupings, sort of how they're cut up in terms of targets, in terms of route participation, and in terms of running backs, percentage of rush attempts, route participation, high-value touches, which is receptions, goal line work, all that good stuff. And when you look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, it's not great. We're talking about a 42% rush attempt running back, 36% route participation running back. He's getting McKinnon, who's taking away receptions, who's taking away goal line touches from him. And even though the Chiefs had that blowout in week 1 against the Cardinals and that kind of skews some of these stats, part of Clyde Edwards-Helaire's appeal is being the garbage time grinder when the Chiefs are up double digits. So if he doesn't have that role, that actually hurts him. So he's now a 5th round running back per this new ADP, going from a round 8 guy to a round 5 guy. And that pretty much tells me he's gone from an upside RB2 that you draft, right? And you hope that he can be an RB2. And now he's a locked in RB2 being drafted in the dead zone. Now, here's the issue. If you drafted him, that's a huge win because you probably punted RB2. Like, let's say it's a hero RB build, right? And you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you take Ramondre Stevenson, you take Edmonds, somebody like that, right? And you're sort of just hoping one of these guys can hit and be your RB2. You hit. You now have a guy who is a RB2 that you sort of had in the mix. He's now a locked and loaded RB2 starter every single week. And I think in builds like that, you probably just have to ride that out. I don't think there's any shame in just riding that out, right? That was the whole point of, taking your dart throws on Clyde, on Kareem Hunt after that, on, James Cook, who hasn't really shined, but Darrell Henderson as well. So if you have that production now coming into your RB2 spot, I think you can just ride that out. We don't just want to keep flipping RB dead zone running backs because at a certain point, you got him for less than you'd have to pay for, the Zekes of the world and the David Montgomerys of the world and the Josh Jacobs of the world. And now you can start a guy in your RB2 spot that you didn't, pass up on Amon-Ra St. Brown for. You didn't pass up on Jerry Jeudy for. You took him in like round 8, round 9. And now you have that profit and you can lock it in. So Dwayne defers me a little bit where I get the idea of selling CH. I think it makes sense, but I also don't think there's a huge market for CEH, right? Where he's been a huge sell candidate in everybody's trade target video this week or trade target articles, anything like that. He's been the hot name. He's also somebody heading into the season that was a post-type sleeper. So everybody's already soured on CEH. It's hard to imagine a scenario where your league mates want to come out here, buy Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a price that would make sense, knowing that his usage has been pretty fluky so far. Like, I can't imagine someone giving you something crazy, right? I don't think anyone's really giving you a top 15 running back for him, a top 15 wide receiver. Maybe you bundle him with somebody, but it's not looking like you can get some crazy return. And I think that's the biggest issue here where people just keep saying, sell Clyde Edwards-Helaire, sell Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Well, it's like, for what? I mean, are you going to say sell Clyde Edwards-Helaire for like a Brandon Cooks? Like, I think I would rather just hold on to my Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, I really don't think there's any shame if you have a hero RB build out there and just holding on to your RB2 archetype and now just letting that ride out. You already got him for super cheap, and he can just be your RB2 guy for the rest of the season. Now, these are the players that go around him in the Best Ball Resurrection tournament. Psych, that's not it. This is the one. And I think in terms of selling Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like I told you, I'm conflicted on. I think obviously he is a clear sell candidate where if this was in season and I saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a 53 ADP guy, he would be somebody we don't want to target. But again, you got him for cheaper than that. Now, if you could turn him in for Marquise Brown, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, even Rashad Bateman, I would do. But outside of that, I wouldn't trade him away for Kirk. I wouldn't do Cooks. I wouldn't do Godwin. I wouldn't do Allen Robinson. I don't think you're going to get a great offer. I wouldn't swap him out for an ETN or even a Zeke Elliott at this point. So I think you just have to sort of ride him out. Again, if you can get one of those really nice wide receiver 2s, have at it. I'll also say the added caveat of if you have, let's say the double hero RB build, right? Let's say you started up top, Swift Saquon, and you took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in like the 9th round. Go ahead, shop him for Marquise Brown, McLaurin, Deontay. If you can't get one of those guys, like I think at that point, maybe you ask them to just throw you like an upside running back off the bench. I'm trying to think, maybe not like a Hilliard, maybe like a James Cook. Like maybe James Cook and Chris Godwin, if you have Swift Saquon out the gate, that could make some sense. Or maybe just a wide receiver and an upside wide receiver. So maybe like Godwin and like a Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Sky Moore type. Something in that area. But I really would only feel pressured to sell CEH if he's not starting in your RB2 spot. If he is, again, I think that he's just somebody that you can cash in on and ride out. So that's sort of how I feel about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. As much as I know a lot of people have been saying that he's a sell candidate, I agree that he profiles like a dead zone running back now, but if you just keep cashing out on your potential RB2 candidates and hero RB builds, then you never really get to stream that 15 points per game if you just keep swapping it out, Now, next guy we'll talk about here is Gabe Davis. He's also been another hot topic. And he's gone from the first Thursday being the 402 as the wide receiver 17. Now he's the 304 as the wide receiver 11. Now, I will say, I wrote this article or this video. I don't know why I said the article. I wrote this video today. He's dealing with an injury. He might not play this week, but I don't really think that factors into him rest of season. It sounds like it's a short-term minor injury. So let's just talk about him in the long term from a macro perspective. I'll maybe touch on his injury maybe in the live stream after this video. But with Gabe Davis, he saw 4 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown for 18.8 points. And his profile is really hard to wrestle with because it's not the type of profile that I like for my wide receiver ones or even like high-end wide receiver twos, where I want the A.J. Brown types who command a 27% plus target share and just have such a nice volume floor. You don't need the big boom plays that a Gabe Davis provides, but there is also a nice aspect to having such high weekly upside from a guy like Gabe Davis, and on top of that, he's already in a great offense that's going to score a lot. So he is someone that gives me fits because when we look at his utilization, again, from Dwayne McFarland, his target share is 16%. You guys know I love target share. I want guys in the 25% plus area, so that's tough. Now, I will say the biggest positive for him is that he was running a route, right? The routes 100%. He was running a route on 100% of Josh Allen's dropbacks. That number was 46.8% for him last year. So now he is a full-time wide receiver on the perimeter attached to Josh Allen. The only real issue isn't even, this is the thing with him, is the only real issue is that he scores points in an unorthodox way where he's not creating his own points, right? He's kind of almost a beneficiary of Josh Allen, like most wide receivers in that offense is. But instead of being a guy who commands like a 25% plus target share and is like undeniable on a week-to-week basis, he's going to have high ADOT targets. So, having targets downfield gives him more efficiency. He's going to get touchdowns from Josh Allen. And on top of that, if Gabe Davis is getting a target, Ben Gretsch brought this up in Stealing Signals the other day. He has a great Substack. He writes on it, and he pretty much covers all the games. And he was almost talking about how Gabe Davis, he's always been efficient, right? On yards per out run, Gabe Davis has always been that guy. And almost what it boils down to with Gabe Davis is in the Rams game, you hear people say, oh, well, Gabe Davis just had like one really long, like broken play where he looked great. The thing about Gabe Davis is that yes, he'll have a 16% target share, but when Gabe Davis is open, he's insanely open. There's some kind of broken play. It's play action. He'll get down the field. Like the way that he wins and the way that they scheme up plays, if Gabe Davis is getting a target, he's most likely wide open, about to make a huge play. So his 16% target share is, I'm not going to say it's as important as, like, say, a Brandon Cooks, like, 30% target share on the Texans, but say, like, a Brandon Cooks, like, 24% target share on the Texans. Like, those are almost about even in terms of importance. Then you get the added efficiency, added touchdowns for Gabe Davis. So while he doesn't produce points the way that I want him to, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not a good fantasy asset. You know what I mean? So that's why it's been a little bit tough to wrestle with him. I will say wide receiver 11 is a little bit steep for me. I just did my rest of season rankings over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart if you want to see them. And I think I ended up with him as like my wide receiver 16, but he's in a huge tier. And that's kind of what it comes down to me for Gabe Davis, is if you want to have him as a top 12 wide receiver, I don't really think I can argue against it. I think Debo and Tyreek are in their own tier when it comes to these wide receivers, but I think Pittman, Evans, Gabe Davis, all the way through Michael Thomas, they're all one big tier for me. I think this early on, none of them have really separated themselves at this point. I think Mike Williams is going to be a big mover after his game. T. Higgins, all he has to do is be healthy, come out here strong, and he'll be, rising up as well. So it's tough where technically he is the wide receiver 11. I think that's too high, but it's such a huge tier where I don't really have a massive problem with it. I also think that he is going to be in play to finish top 12 if he just can get anywhere near that 20% target share mark. So I don't think having him in the top 12 is anything too crazy. I think he's a fine bet. Third-year breakout attached to Josh Allen. I can't really fault you for buying into him. Next, I want to talk about a twofer. James Robinson and Travis Etienne. And I wanted to cover this one as a whole backfield, considering both guys have had so much movement, where James Robinson went from the 1203 as the RB45 to the 801 as the RB30 in the Resurrection Tournament. You also have Etienne, who was the 402 as the RB16. He's now moved back to the 506 as the RB18. So James Robinson's moved up 4 rounds, 15 running back spots Etienne hasn't fallen as far, right? He's only fallen about a round and like a third, and only 2 running back spots. That's kind of just how ugly running back is right now. That's also some part of the reason why I don't think Clyde's a huge sell. After like the top 15 running backs, it gets really ugly, man. Again, he fell a full round, but only 2 running back spots there. Like, there's only so many running backs you can put ahead of Travis Etienne and Clyde Edwards-Helaire before it just gets to like nasty territory. Now, when we talk about James Robinson, in his first game back from an Achilles tear, he had 11 rushes for 66 yards and a touchdown. He had 2 targets, a catch, and 3 yards through the air for 19.9 points. On the other hand, you had Etienne, who screwed up all over the place. Multiple drops on the goal line. He had a fumble. He had less than 10 touches, only 7.5 points, and it's looking rough. Now, Dwayne McFarland had his utilization report, which broke down sort of what these roles look like on paper, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. And this is tough, man. This is tough, where this is a clean 50-50 split. The snaps, 49% to 51%. We'll call it a clean 50-50 there, where Robinson's the clear grinder. As you can see, rush attempts, he had way more rush attempt percentage. He had 55% of all the rush attempts. He had 100% of the inside the 5 attempts. So he is the grinder. He is probably the goal line back, right, when they're in close, like 5 yards out. He's probably that guy. Now, Etienne, on the other hand, had an interesting role as well. He played 93% of the 2-minute drill, 75% of the long down and distance snaps. So he's out there as their main pass-catching back. That's always great. The issue here is that outside of those situations, nothing else really popped, where he only had 4 rush attempts. You need more than that. He doesn't have the goal line work locked up. Robinson had an inside the 5 carry, but Etienne also had a few targets in close. He was, in that like green zone, like 10-yard area. He was featured as well, but if he keeps dropping passes, he's not going to be trusted in that area for much longer, which is concerning for sure. And then the biggest bummer is that he only ran a route on 48% of dropbacks. We want 60% plus. 60% plus is that elite Eckler, Kamara, Swift, whoever you want to say. 60% of the routes, that's what we need. 48% is not going to cut it. 11% of the targets is not going to cut it. So that's kind of what you're running into here. Now, Etienne, that was his first game ever as a pro in an actual NFL game. His role could grow, right? Those routes could get to 60%. Those targets get to like 15, 20%. Rush attempts could get up to like 35, 45%. And then from there, he could probably pay off as like a high-end RB2. But I will be honest, right now it's looking rough. I mean, it's tough to really put him much further down than RB18. I mean, I have him in my rest of season rankings as RB19, right? It's just because of how ugly running back is right now. There's not a ton of guys you can really make a case for ahead of Etienne, but he probably has to right the ship very soon. And I also will say I don't really have a huge problem with James Robinson's ADP either. I have him as my RB30. He's RB30 in ADP. 8th round doesn't feel like too much of an overreaction. Like, he's right in that range where we just drafted Clyde, we just drafted Ramondre, we just drafted Tony Pollard, Edmonds. I think it's fair after that week to put him in that range where, he is the 1B at worst as the between the tackles grinder. He's kind of like a Damian Harris, maybe probably like a Damian Harris, maybe a little bit more upside to just win the role outright. There is that in the range of outcomes where, he just becomes the bell cow and Etienne just becomes a situational pass catcher, which would really suck for all the Etienne bag holders out there, me included. So something to keep an eye on. I think James Robinson moving up and Etienne moving down is fine on both fronts. I wouldn't freak out about Etienne yet. If I could sell James Robinson for, something nice, I probably would, but I think 8th round in redraft, probably not there yet. Now, Dynasty, I think, would be a different conversation. I know this isn't a Dynasty video, but if you have James Robinson out there and you can cash in for like a second, I think I would all day long. At the end of the day, he's an undrafted free agent, repaired Achilles. Wouldn't want to gamble on that for super long term. Then we have another running back duo. I don't know why I said duel, but we have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And A.J. Dillon went from the 506 as the RB19 to the 405 as the RB16. So he's moved up around. He's moved up 3 running back spots. And on the other hand, Aaron Jones went from 207 as the RB11 to the 307 as the RB14. And I wanted to sort of really touch on this here because I know a lot of guys out there. I have a buddy of mine who has Aaron Jones in our home league, absolutely freaking out. And I think you got to pump the brakes a little bit on freaking out about Aaron Jones. I think that A.J. Dillon moving up is warranted. I think Aaron Jones moving down a little bit is warranted. I'd probably still have Aaron Jones as like a late second, not so much like a mid-third like he is here. But when we talk about sort of their usage from last week, this is the way that it looks in the utilization report, again, from Dwayne McFarland. And first of all, the A.J. Dillon love is warranted. I also have him as my RB16 in the rest of season rankings, so I'm right on par with ADP. And again, that's kind of just how disgusting running back is after the top 12 to 15. Like once you get past, like Kamara, Aaron Jones, Najee, and you start getting into like Chubb, Etienne, I guess Gibson, Clyde is in that area, like Miles Sanders. It just gets really ugly after those top like 13, 14. That's why Dillon sort of just has to be there. And he should be, he's in a great role where he's going to be really efficient between the tackles. He had an 18% target share, which is really promising. I don't think that'll hold over a long-term basis over the entire season, but he'll definitely be featured as a wide receiver just given how bad the wide receiver room is. And the main reason I brought this up is because I'm really saying don't panic on Aaron Jones just yet. Don't go out there, try and trade him. Don't go out there, start panicking. I get it. He only had 10 touches last week for only 10.6 points. It's not great, but I think the usage is still promising. Now, I know 28% of the rush attempts, you're looking at that and you're like, damn, like he has literally a Travis Etienne role here. The thing is that 65% route number. 65% participation on the routes is an elite number. He essentially led all Packers in wide receiver routes ran. And on top of that, the reason why Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon snaps aren't a clean 100%, right? 61 plus 51 isn't 100, so how is that possible? Because Aaron Jones is lining up as wide receiver while A.J. Dillon is the backfield sometimes, which is really good. We want them both not having to be mutually exclusive on the field, right? We want them sort of overlapping. And when we talk about Aaron Jones, Dwayne makes a really good point in his utilization report. I'll read it in a second, but it's what we've been saying all summer long, that A.J. Dillon, and we've already seen this in week one, A.J. Dillon can pay off without an Aaron Jones injury, and they can both coexist in this Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram type role where one of them is the grinder and the goal line back, and one of them is the pass-catching back who also scores touchdowns just because Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones. And this is what Dwayne said. He said, Jones took a backseat to Dillon on the ground, but his 65% route participation was elite. If he can sustain that rate, it will be worth the carries he gives up in PPR and half PPR formats. This split looks similar to what we saw from Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in the early days of that duo. Kamara in 2017, Eckler in 2017, and Danny Woodhead in 2015 all managed top 4 finishes without a 40% rush share. So I think both of these guys are in play to finish top 12 to 15 in points per game. I really don't think you can take this game into account in terms of its fullest when we think about the idea that this is the Packers offense led by Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. They have talent. They just played poorly. They only put up 7 points. When the offense, like the Packers, only puts up 7 points, only so many of these guys can score points, right? If A.J. Dillon scores that touchdown, there's only so much to go around when you're only scoring 7 points. I think that they bounce back, right? The Packers had a similar first game last year, and then they bounced back and they scored points everywhere. I think we will see that here. Again, if they only scored 1 touchdown, Aaron Jones getting to 10 points with only 1 touchdown for the entire offense, I don't think is even that bad. So this offense will get better. Aaron Jones will benefit from that, and that's why I'm not panicking yet, because the usage is great. And again, this isn't how the offense is going to look like all year. They're not going to score just 7 points in a game. There's going to be games where Aaron Jones scores 2 touchdowns, A.J. Dillon scores 1 touchdown, and everybody eats. Again, I think that both of these guys can finish top 12 to 15. If you have A.J. Dillon, I think you hold on to him. I think that 4th round price is probably warranted. And if you have Aaron Jones, hold on to him. I saw him as a 2nd rounder in my rest of season rankings. I'm actually much higher than the underdog ADP, having him as like the 307. I still think that he can be fine. Now, that's going to do it for us today. I did just want to talk about, I believe that was 6 players. I just want to talk about some players that have kind of, shifted around in value since week 1, just to kind of talk about them. Guys that we didn't get to touch on in the top 10 takeaways, guys I didn't get to touch on in the trade target video, and just kind of give you guys some fresh takes on this Saturday. Now, again, as soon as this goes live, I think I'm going to live stream probably in the next 15 to 30 minutes after this goes live. Maybe I'll eat first, but we're going to hop on the Best Ball Resurrection. So make sure that you hop on Underdog Fantasy. I'll have the link down below in the description, down below in the comments. You hop on there, they'll match your deposit all the way up to $100. Get in on the fun of this Best Ball Resurrection tournament. $10 to enter, $100,000 to first place, $500,000 in prizes. It's a great way to not only, get some more skin in the game, get some more teams out there, but also just drafting and seeing the ADP. It'll give you a much better feel for the market right now, just in terms of trades, just kind of where is everybody's head at in terms of how they value a Saquon, how they value a Dalvin Cook, right? Derrick Henry's like at the 202 now. So you can kind of just see how people are feeling about these different fantasy players and then maybe even take that into trade talks. So with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like, hit the notification bell. I never asked you guys to hit the notification bell, but we're going live. If you want to hop in the live stream, make sure you put the post notifications on. We're going to hop in there, answer some fantasy questions, do a resurrection draft. It'll be a good time. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Meaner.